Welcome to the cemetery walk today. My name is Reverend Shoultz, and I'm here to talk about I and my husband, the Reverend Rudolph Shoultz's experience here in Springfield. Our graves are down the hill next to the road by the African American Heritage flag, but I'm up here to save you some steps. Some of you may remember my Rudolph. If you ever heard him speak, he died in 2000, and I lived until 2011. But if you ever heard him speak, you would know immediately that he was not from the United States. He was from St. Thomas, Jamaica. And even though he was here most of his adult life, he never lost that beautiful, well, I thought it was beautiful, Jamaican accent, even though he spent most of his adult life here in Springfield. He was called to the ministry as a young man. He received his training at the Moody Bible Institute in Chicago. He received his Doctor of Divinity from the Ministerial Institute and College in West Point. That's where we met, and that's where I'm from, West Point. He received his Doctor of Humanities from the United Theological Seminary in Monroe, Louisiana. He then came back to Illinois, where he pastored in Freeport and 15 years in Dixon, Illinois. Then we received a call, and a calling it was, to the Union Baptist Church here in Springfield in 1968. Springfield was not heaven on earth, and Rudolph never failed to point out the problems and deficiencies, but it became our home, and we loved it here. Rudolph was a great preacher, but one of the things that he used to say is, I don't like to preach to hungry people. So when we first came to Springfield, he made it his first responsibility and job to connect to state government. During his 32 years here, he met with every Illinois governor and secretary of state because they were the major employers in Springfield. He would say, how can I preach to my people Jesus Christ and not demonstrate to him how he will provide jobs and put food on their table? So that was his mission while he was here in Springfield. He knew what it was like to be helped. It was an older Black woman who had scrubbed floors most of her life, who gave him $1,300 in the 1950s to continue his education. She used the money that she'd earned from her salary, as well as money that she cashed in a life insurance policy to help him make it through his education, and he never forgot her. He said that when he told her that he had been called to a church to pastor, that she leaped in the air for joy because she was so happy that her small contribution had made him successful. Some people would say, is politics really a part of a pastor's job? But for my Rudolph, that was never a question. Never, ever a question. He would say, we have a saying here, it's throw the stick back. It means that when you have crossed over, when you have become successful, you throw the stick back to someone else so that they can be equally successful. He said, I'm the pastor of a large Black church. And he said that these politicians need votes to get elected. So he said, I just threw my 200 pounds around. While he was here, he was also a leader in the community. When he came to Union Baptist Church, he had just received his doctorate, and he had his papers hanging behind his desk up on the wall. And he said a local criminal came to see him. And I won't dignify that man by calling his name, but he came in with his entourage, and he looked on the wall and he saw Rudy's papers. And I won't tell you what the man said, but Rudolph said what he said. But I will paraphrase. He said, shoot, this man's a doctor. I'm not going to talk to no doctor. So he turned on his heels and left the office with his entourage behind him. And Rudolph said, I jumped up immediately and took that paper down off the wall. He said, if a piece of paper is going to keep people from talking to me, I don't want to be bothered with that. And he took it down and never put it back up. He was also a church builder. We were church builders, both politically, both spiritually and physically. During our time here, his 32 years as pastor of the Union Baptist Church, we built a food pantry. There was an educational wing. We had a daycare center. And we also constructed 24 apartments called the Union Baptist Plaza for the elderly. He was always spending his time helping those in need. During the funeral services that we had for Rudolph, one of the speakers was Mr. William Cellini. He, and most of you will know him. I can tell by your snickers. Most of you are familiar with him. He was a man that knew his way around state government. And he and Rudolph worked well together over the years, providing jobs and different opportunities for people. One of the things that Mr. Cellini said is that when he met with Rudolph, and by that time the cancer had spread to his legs and he was no longer able to walk, he said, "But what do you think Rudolph wanted to know?" He wanted to know, can you find jobs for my people? He was looking out for his people even until the end of his life. There were other speakers. There were blacks and whites. There were Republicans and Democrats. There were politicians and religious people who attended the services. And many of the speakers quoted a very familiar Bible passage. And it's found in 2 Timothy 4:7. And it says, "I have fought the good fight. I have finished my course. I have kept the faith." And if I were to summarize Rudolph's life, that would be the Bible passage that I would use. Thank you for allowing me to tell you about my Rudolph.